All right, hello and welcome, my good friends, to another weekly edition of Stock Market Mutterings. This is for the week beginning on March 25th, and I will do my best to look through these charts, to give you my thoughts and feelings about the market, to try to make some sense out of it in the attempts to help you guys make a little bit more money with your trading. Now, speaking of trading, as I always start these out, if you need help with that, you're just inconsistent, you don't have enough confidence in your trading business, and you just can't get the types of profits that you're looking for, I'm going to post the link here on the screen. Take a moment to visit our live trade room, trade with us, and see if that's something that can help you get to that next level or take that next step in the evolution of your trading career. So let's talk about it. In order for us to do that, I want to go back and talk about last week's Stock Market Mutterings, because the title of that was "The Day of Reckoning is Here." We were at this really pivotal point in the market where it closed last Friday, and that was right up there at that multi-month resistance point of 281s to 282s, and it was either going to bust right on through that and we were going to start sniffing out all-time highs in the market, or we were going to get significant we were going to get significant rejection at that level and then start selling off. Well, as the market always does, it's never just, night and day, cut and dry. It's never just that simple. There's always some drama involved. So in fact, we've got practically both of those moves. At the beginning of the week, we broke through that level, given the thoughts, hey, we are going to make some all-time highs. We're just going to continue to melt up to all-time highs. And on Thursday, the market just really had almost zero pullback the entire day. And then all of a sudden on Friday, just with the snap of a finger, it gave it all back. And it was just the complete opposite of what happened on Thursday. All buying on Thursday, no pullbacks. Then you turn around Friday, it's all selling on Friday, no bounces, and that's what happened. Just completely wiped out everything that Thursday did. So at the bottom line of this is at the end of the week, still closed underneath of this level here, this 281 level. You still ended up closing under that. So the bottom line to all of this is, regardless of what it did at the beginning of the week or the days that it had, it still finishes the week in negative territory, and it's still under that. So it was kind of struggling a little bit with that, but you finally got that big push. And the way that things ended on Thursday, like I said, really kind of gave you this impression, or that herd mentality that, hey, this market is going to try to take a stab at those all-time highs. And here you got some pretty aggressive selling on Friday. So what does that mean? You feel at this point, this is quite a few topping points here with this market. I've highlighted this several times. This is October, November, December. You've had February here, March here, and then later here in March you finally broke it, but you haven't really been able to stay above it. It just feels like right now you're probably going to see a little bit more downward pressure on this market. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't pull the same shenanigans that it did on Thursday, Friday, that it can't flush out deep on Monday, sell down a few hundred or sell down significantly, and then turn around and rally back up before the end of the week. I mean, yeah, it certainly could do that. We're going to find out a little bit more information about it as the week progresses, or how the tone of trading is on Monday. But I want to give you a few levels to look at that will give you some clues here to where it might end up and how it might trade. If you start to see some lower pressure, I'm going to open up this here just a little bit for everyone to see here. Back this up here just so you can see. All right. If you start to see some more pressure, you've got to look at this 200-day moving average down here, which is like 275, just a shade over 275. That would be my first area to take a look. So if you're gapping down or you're selling off aggressively any point throughout Monday, then take a look at this level right here for support. And under that, I would take a look at this 272 if things really get aggressive, which is just under the 50-day moving average. So I would expect that, either you see an instant move that flushes into this early, or you get a slow melt back down to that level. I think that's where it kind of wants to go. How it gets there, well, that's the million-dollar question. Nobody knows. But if you do see some aggressive panic selling, or you see some consistent selling and you're looking for a bounce area, take a look at those first. And then pay attention if it does get down there to the way that it's acting. If there's aggressive buyers stepping in, if there's strong bounces at that level, then maybe that'll tell you that's a shorter term bottom for the week and it can bounce back up from that. Or if it starts to lose that, then we really have to look far away. But first things first, take a look at those. Now, let's say the market does a crazy, back to back to back, kind of like sold off and bought it all back and sold off and bought it all back. You got to look at Thursday's high. You're going to have to press through Thursday's high. So if this thing does stabilize itself and start to tick back up, then you can think about those all-time highs again. So interesting little market movement there. Pay attention to those levels. To the upside, you're going to have to start trading above 283 now. And to the downside, if you start to see some selling, look between 272 and 275 on the market. Now this brings us up to a couple of decent trading opportunities. I want to go over a couple. I want to give you some shorts, I'll give you some longs, and I'll take these and I'll give you a couple of different trading scenarios that you can use with these. First one here I want to take a look at is this MDB. Okay, this MDB. Now this thing, man, I tell you what, look at this chart. This thing is just, since their earnings, 102 to 152. It's like a $50 move here over the last week. Obviously, this thing is pretty radical, and from right now, based on the RSI reading of something like this, based on the parabolic nature, the stretched nature of this chart, you're kind of entertaining the idea, well, not kind of, you are entertaining the idea of possibly shorting it, because if you're buying it, the signs here that say, look, I'm chasing a stock here that's up $50. Now, just because you're chasing it up $50 if you're going long, doesn't mean it can't go up 50 more. We all know that. But I'd like to look at this one as a short. Now, the way this behaves compared to some of the other stocks I trade, like a Tesla or a Netflix or Nvidia, it's a little bit different than that. With something like this, if you're a parabolic trend, you're trading against the trend, let's say, counter trend trader, you're shorting the parabolics, you're buying the flushes. I think this is something that might not be set up well for that. You would want to look for a pivot on this, something like here, where you get some sort of area where you can lock in a limited amount of risk. It's not a stock that you can just trade and put a little bit in there, then add, because this thing may not have no top. Same way if you're buying a dip on it, it might not have no bottom. I mean, you had some pretty gnarly range on this thing Friday where it opens up at 153, just immediately sells off to 147, then comes back up to 153s. I mean, this is nutty range, but if you're paying close attention to this chart, you're setting up your levels, you're looking at the support and resistances, this thing is a great trading stock in both directions. Obviously, it feels like the monster value here coming this week will be to the downside. But, I mean, look at this. This is a really nice stock. It has some great trading ranges to both directions. But kind of looking for maybe capitalizing on a 5 to 8 point short on this. Going to have to look at some spots. That's what I'm saying. Now, some of our favorite names had some outstanding weeks, and deservedly so, because they've been kind of crappy. And two of those I want to look at here is Nvidia and Apple. Actually, let's go Nvidia, Apple, and TTD. We'll talk about all of those, and they're all going to have the same theme for me. Is they're good stocks, and they've had a lot of success. I get that, but over this last week, these especially have had an enormous amount of buyers, and it's just been relentless buying in those. So when you take a look at something like Nvidia, this is what happens. These stocks get beat up for a while. They stay dormant for a while. I did a video a long time ago about the money cycle. Eventually, the money cycle flows into these names. It was a tech-heavy week there early, and then you start to see this move up. So you're looking at 144 here to 183. Apple had much of a similar move. I'll show you that chart. And again, it's tough for you as a trader if you're really looking to make the big money and you really want that big meaty move out of your trades. It's hard to get that after a stock's already moved $20 in 2 weeks or $30 in 2 weeks. You've already missed a big chunk of that move. So you're just kind of fighting over the crumbs. On that note, I think if you start to see the aggressive selling, some of these could definitely use a rest for a pullback. So either you can look at that as a shorting opportunity, or waiting at a better opportunity to reload on a nice pullback on some of this stuff coming into a more respectable range of trading. I like this one to trade back down into 170 and then the 20 moving average here of 162, somewhere in those two spots during the week. So before I show you the Apple and the TTD, I have the same thoughts for both of these, and that is if you start out Monday and you really get aggressive, well, this was 3 of them, not 2. If you really get aggressive, you gap down, you start seeing some hefty panic, I'd look to buy these. So let's say NVIDIA is trading somewhere down here in the 169s on a big sell-off. I'd probably look to bounce that. I think if you get down in here, it's a reasonable look with some good pivots, finding some good areas there. On the other note, I think it's going to be a lot like what I was talking about with MDB. Like your money is going to come from the short side, I think, but I wouldn't still chase a short on that. But I do think you're going to see this thing trade down here below. And again, hey, if it wants to take out high, then you can't. If it wants to do it, it's going to do it. But I think you're going to still see some selling pressure. Same thing with Apple. Almost an identical move here. Apple going from 169 all the way up to damn near 200 on Friday morning was one of the really strong ones. It was relentless in its buying and just not really offering any pullback. Even while the market was selling off in the morning, this thing was still strong. But it finally succumbed to the pressure there. So maybe you see this thing trade down between its 10 moving average here of 186 and then the 182 area. I'd be a buyer down there. Up until that point, I'm somewhat of a short seller depending on market activity. And I'll show you this TTD. This is another one. It's just, again, these are great stocks. They've had great runs, but everything, needs to take a break, take a rest, a cool down lap. They're just not going to have consistent buying for the rest of its life. And, you saw that here. And also when you're looking at them, they, like this TTD is one, it's already had a pretty good move downwards too. So if that's the first move you start seeing on Monday, I certainly wouldn't chase a short there. But watch this one here. I like them all as shorts, and I'd like to, possibly longs if we see another pivot. Now, one that's a little bit clearer to read is this iRobot, which I've been talking about for weeks. This thing is like robotic vacuum cleaners are the rage. This one has a much cleaner, more defined setup where you're not just coming off a parabolic. You're just starting to get weaker and weaker as the days go by. And this thing's already pulled back. You can see where I've got this line up here. This thing has just holding on for dear life here at just this high 118 spot. And you were right here. You can see you had a test of that a few days ago. You had a test of that at the beginning of March. And then you've also had a test of that in February. So this is really rock solid support. So pay very close attention to that. I mean, if it loses this, trades under that, can't stay around this area, there's really, for all intents and purposes, that stock should trade much, much lower as the week goes, especially if there's market selling pressure overall. That will only just aid that cause. But just like with the rest of them, don't rule out the long trade here either, that if this thing holds up strongly, refuses to go underneath of that level, then hey, maybe it bounces. You never know what you're going to get. So anyway, we'll go with those here, mainly looking at MDB, Apple, and TTD for continuation shorts, but by no means am I chasing those shorts on any gap downs Monday, any panic flushes on Monday. That's just not what I do. In fact, I'd probably look at buying those, but let's pay attention to those as they go on. And more importantly, how the market reacts Monday, where those support levels are if you start to see some heavy selling, if you start to see some buying again, a panic buy maybe in the morning followed by a retracement. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different scenarios that can happen. Just prepare yourself for each and every one of those. So as always, guys, I hope this market mutterings help you. If you have tips, hints, or suggestions, please send them to me at support@thelincolnlist.com. I want to thank you for watching this video and trade well.